we have a few questions about the recent events that took place at the elementary. First of all, do you believe the police and school staff handled the bomb threat properly?
I do. We had, we have our protocols, we have our processes we go through, and the threat actually, even though it was made towards the elementary school, was first discovered via email in our building, and we reacted to the threat, made the proper phone calls, and put the evacuation process in motion, and things went off close to without a hitch. I mean, I felt like it was a great practice for us, and thank heavens there was nothing there. But the having to do it, the process went really well, and Officer Jordan, he handled things from the law enforcement standpoint. So,
Officer Jordan, do you have anything to add?
Kind of covered it, but yeah, I mean, it was handled properly. Once we arrived and were notified of the threat, first two phone calls from us was to the bomb squad and to the FBI.
Yeah. Very good news. If it was real, probably would have saved a lot of lives.
Yeah. I learned in the process of going through it that, once the threat was made, then the police department contacts immediately the bomb squad in Nebraska, which I think is, Kearney, North Platte is where ours went through that channels, and and the FBI, because instantly they needed the information that came in the email, and the IPs, addresses, and all that. And so I was impressed with how fast that got into the nationwide system as to what happened. So
that's good to know.
So we called the bomb tick on North Platte with State Patrol, and he had seen similar emails. So at that time we had an idea that maybe this was along that line, but we have to take it seriously till we know better.
Yep, I heard that it was basically just a petty attempt at a Bitcoin scam. Happened all across the United States and Canada. You can't predict what happens, but you can surely prevent and help the event to go right. I understand as a staff member you have to take all threats seriously, but when you first heard it, were you convinced that it was real or wasn't?
I would answer that two ways. Number one, yes, you take all threats serious. Any threat against a student life, something of this magnitude, we take serious and we put action in place. Then at the same token, as we're putting those actions in place and you're digesting all the words on the paper, you start thinking to yourself, this maybe is a scam, it's a hoax. But yeah, anytime the threat of lives at stake, you don't get to make that choice. I don't make that choice. Officer Jordan would make that choice. We're going to put motion. We're going to always go the full extent, and then we can back off and let the proper authorities say whether it was a hoax or not, which, within 30 minutes of us starting the evacuation process, the police and the FBI through contacts had a pretty good idea it was, but I would never second guess our making the decision to go.
Very smart. Anything you don't want to add, Jordan?
I think he hit it. I mean, I think we were kind of busy with everything else that was going on, so we were hoping it wasn't.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was with the accident on North Highway 83 and J. It just was a lot going on. We had a lot of people, and when we started talking about the actual going through the building and doing the sweep of the building, it was the sheriff were tied up, the city employees were tied up, the police department was tied up, so we actually had to wait a little bit to get the process going to Officer Jordan and some guys to shuffle people around from the wreck and get some people to the school to start that process, which is an unusual situation to have multiple things like that at once.
Correct.
Yeah.
I have a little off-topic question. Were there any accidents when the parents came to pick up their students? Because I saw a photo, there was a ton of cars lined up. Were there any problems happening there other than really bad traffic?
No, the staff at the elementary school did a great job of evacuating the kids, getting over to the Kiplinger, setting up their process to release kids to parents, the parents came in, yeah, there was a lot of them, and it was
Yeah.
kind of a traffic jam. There was no accidents, you know, the parents were all very calm, very cooperative with the system, and I thought that went very smooth.
Okay, that's good. Do you think the school security, such as the door codes, you yourself as a resource officer, and the cameras could prevent an event like this happening?
So, yes, because one, we control access into the building, right? And then the cameras become useful because we actually have remote access into them as the police department. So my guys that are patrolling can pull up the camera system in their car and have a live look into the school. So let's say, maybe not necessarily a bomb threat, but let's say an active shooter or an active threat of that
That's a big
nature.
problem.
We could pull that up and actually see into the school, have an idea of where that person is at before we ever come in the door.
Smart.
Yeah, I would state that, you know, having the ability to lock all the doors, having the camera system would be a major deterrent for someone wanting to come in here and play something. Constant access by Officer Jordan and the administration, I think all of those are deterrents. I agree with everything he said. I do know that, you know, in this type of situation, when you're talking about a bomb threat, you know, if something did turn into an actual incident, all of that stuff would help in catching,
Yep.
but
It wouldn't
you still got a lot of film to go back and watch, and it's real time, you know, and I feel like we've really done a fantastic job of securing our campus and make it safer, but there are a lot of doors here. There's a lot of access points, and the only way you can lock it, but the only way you truly prevent those is you still got to have watchful eyes at each exit all the time. And so we've come a long ways, and I think that we do, our system does help with all of that, but there's great challenges in securing this building with as many entrances and exits as there is.
What's the normal protocol when threats like this are made? And I'm not asking for the 52-page
No, I got you.
handbook, but your opinion.
Well, I think number one is we have as administrators, we have a, you know, number one phone call is going to go to our police, to Officer Jordan is our number one, to the superintendent of schools, making them apprised of the situation. And then we have a protocol for everything. We have a protocol for a bomb threat. We have a protocol for a intruder. We have a protocol for an intruder, or not an intruder, but a disturbance outside. And as you students know, we have lockdown, we have lock in, we have lockout, we have all these things that would take place. You know, the elementary school knew exactly what to do. When they said evacuate, the teachers knew evacuate to the Kiplinger Arena. If the high school, if we had to go into an evacuation mode, depending on, let's assume it was something over on the north end of the building, then we're headed straight to the Y. If it was there, or if it was something in this area, we would be heading straight to the city auditorium. So we all have our different plans, places, and things that we go through and know how to handle these situations. So there's protocols involved with everything, and we've went through them and over them, but every situation is going to lend itself a little bit different. Last year when we had the fire at the Kugler residence on the north side of town, that was a situation we really didn't have, but we evacuated, we had the buses, and we got them onto this campus. Was it perfect? No, but did it work, and did we learn something from it? Absolutely. So
I think the drills that you and other administrators set in place helped wonderfully. Like if there weren't drills happening, I don't think they could get out of the building fast enough, and whether it's real or not, you always have to be prepared and hurry.
yeah, well, you got to have drills, you do. Last year we had the mock disaster drill with the active shooter, you know, right before school got out at the end of the year, and learned some great things from that. And so you have to do those things to make yourself better, you know. Over all these years, why do we always have fire alarm drills? Because if fire broke out, we need to know what to do.
Yep.
Why do we have tornado drills throughout the year? Because we need to know what to do. And in today's world, these threats that we're dealing with now are real, and so we have to make sure we're prepared.
without getting to any specifics, basically as law enforcement, we're gonna respond and we're gonna take all threats seriously until we can prove that they're not. And you know, we're gonna make those phone calls that we have to make. And one being to the bomb squad of, hey, if we find something, can you get here? And then the FBI. That became a pretty big part of this one, because once we made that call to the FBI, they started popping up all over, and now we know, okay, this is just a mass email type system, right? So I can't really get into specifics, but yeah, we, you know, and when you guys drill, we drill as well, you know, and we learn from those drills, and you know, we know exactly how long it's going to take us to respond to an incident, we know how long it would ideally take us to end that situation, and or finish the evacuation process if you guys were locked down.
Do you know like an estimated time on how long it took to evacuate the elementary?
We estimated in less than 20 minutes from the first phone call
Wow.
to less than 20 minutes, we had every person in the Kiplinger Arena. That so to evacuate out of the building was less than 15.
That
so.
is amazing.
And I can tell you guys, when I got there, because after I went over and got the Kiplinger opened up and the heaters on, and then I went to the elementary school, there was literally 4 people in the building. 5. There's a couple law enforcement and Mr. Norgard, Mr. Wallace, maintenance, and myself, and that was it. I mean, you couldn't hear a mouse in there. And they left with such abruptness that the cafeteria and the lunch tables were just loaded with trays, and you could see where this kid might have only opened his milk and this kid hadn't touched his food. I mean, it was just, you could see they picked up and went, and some of the classes even evacuated straight from the playground. I mean, didn't re-enter the building, just went straight from there. And so and every kid was accounted for, and they had great accurate records on everything. So
I'm amazed.
yeah, kudos to Mr. Dickus, who handles our safety, to Mr. Borland and all the elementary staff for handling things in the abruptness that they did. So
I was kind of thinking it'd be around 40 minutes, saying they're just little kids, they don't really take like the drill seriously, so I thought they would have been harder to keep on, but that is amazing.
by the time we made the phone call and I got in my truck and drove over there to unlock the Kiplinger, the classes were already lined up. And I was in, you know, somebody was laughing because when we got the call, Mr. Dickus and I took off running, and they said, something's wrong, Coach Gross is running. So you know, but literally, we got over there pretty fast, and they were already out of the building, so.
In the past, have you had a situation like this? If so, did you handle it moderately the same?
We've had bomb threats to our district over the years. I've been employed here for 21 years, and this isn't the first. And we've had threats over the time, and we do take everyone serious. The last time one happened during the day has been several years ago. Officer Jordan might have been a student in school at that point. We did have an evacuation one time then, but it's been years since we've had that. We have had some threats in more recent years that were done over social media and were done in the evening hours, and we were able to get our forces together and determine that the threat wasn't credible, or still do the building sweep and things. So we have dealt with this situation in the past. We take them all serious, but you know, this is going to kind of roll into your last question, Davin, but you know, how do we prevent these things from happening? What's the best thing we can do is, man, we need to know our students, and our students need to trust each other. And if somebody's hurting and somebody feels like they're having struggles, then we as kids need to reach out to adults for help. And as adults, we need to be noticing that this kid is struggling, and so we need to be lending ourselves to them as to what we can do to help them get in a great place so we don't end up in these situations. I really believe that as much support as we can give every student will keep us away from random acts of violence like this. So knowing our kids. So
as far as handling the situation, the same. So for us, every situation's a little different.
Yep, you can't really predict it.
Right. So in a situation like this, we knew the school was empty, there was no lives in danger at that point in time. The first thing we're gonna wanna do is look at that threat and determine the credibility of it, and then we can decide how to proceed from there. So it's gonna vary on the threat, how we receive that threat. You know, do we have an empty building like we did Friday? You know, and that changes kind of how we have to approach it and respond to it.
Yep, sounds really like a good explanation. You kind of already answered a little bit of my last one, but what kind of help do students have access to when dealing with mental or physical health issues?
You know, we don't have all the answers at the school. We don't have all the resources to have all the answers. But if somebody's hurting, we're going to get them the help they need. We're going to get them. We're gonna find mental health providers. We're going to let our adults. We're going to let the law enforcement is here to help, not just prosecute, not just be always reactive. We want to help in every way. We have great doctors in town. We have great therapists. We have great counselors. We have places outside of McCook that we can get to. So there's help available for everybody. Our number one thing is letting people feel comfortable enough that they can reach out. That the whole message that if you're hurting, if you're struggling inside, reach out. But sometimes people won't do that. So then it's the rest of us on our shoulders to recognize it. If your friend is hurting, recognize it and reach out and be kind and find out what you need, and then share that information with adults so we can get the proper help that they need. And the same thing for adults. There's adults hurting out there besides kids, and so making sure that everybody has an advocate, someone that's going to fight for them to make sure that they stay safe. And so, but we can get access to anything if we need it. It may not always seem that way, but there is. We've dealt with every situation imaginable, and in the end, we've got people help. So
on the physical health, obviously the hospital here in town, we have doctors, just as he said, and if we have great paramedics, and the ambulance, they're ready to go.
Let's hope we never have to use them though. Right.
We don't want to have to do that, but if we need to, that's what they're there for. On the mental health side of things, there are the resources. Maybe not directly here in town, but we can get you that resource if you need it. But as Mr. Gross kind of already hit, you guys got to help us know who needs it. And so I have ways of getting them the mental health, but I don't always know who needs it. Okay? So if you know somebody's struggling, you gotta let me know. I can visit with them, and let's say they need that help, but they don't want to take it. I have authority to direct it anyway. Okay? And that's not a criminal thing, and it's not a punishment, but it's a way of basically ensuring that student gets the help that they need so that they're safe going forward.
Yeah, and I'd follow up with what, when he used the term ambulance. Let's hope we don't need an ambulance for that type of emergency situation. But man, reach out to 911 if so-and-so's hurting. If so-and-so's hurting from a mental state, it's okay to reach out to the emergency center, because that is an emergency. And maybe they're not coming to fix a wound. They're coming to get you the support and help, get you to the hospital, because all of our medical doctors they haven't specialized maybe in mental health, but they can still deal with it and help diagnose at least where to get the person to. So I think that's one thing we forget about our medical community sometimes in terms of the mental health, that when somebody is hurting, don't be afraid to get to the emergency room, to get to 911, to get that help. Not from a standpoint we gotta get them in the right place, and that's a start. Just like at the school, it's a start to get with Officer Jordan, to get with one of the administrators, to get with one of the counselors, to get with one of the secretaries, to get with one of the teachers, to get with one of the janitors, to get with somebody, because we're advocate for kids to give you the help you need.
And outside the school hours, that 911 phone call, all our officers, all our medics are trained to help deal with those type of situations, and and appropriately assess and respond how they feel appropriately. And a lot of times, if we decide somebody does need that help, the first place we're gonna go is the ER. And just make sure everything physically is okay with you, and then we can figure out a game plan from there, working with the doctors here, and everybody else. And sometimes, yeah, we may put you in an ambulance for that transport, because that may be a little less stressful for you than riding in the back of a cop car, right?
Yeah.
And so, you know, we try to, nobody's in trouble, and we don't want you to think that you're in trouble if you reach out for help and we're trying to provide it, and that's not what it is.
It's just more protocols you have to follow. You have to make sure everyone's safe, make
Correct.
sure they're safe themselves, and you gotta try to help them.
Right.
Mhm.
First and foremost, the person in the crisis is the safety we're concerned about, first and foremost, and then everybody else's, right? So, we take precautions and we follow our policies and how we have to handle that, but, you know, it's, just because you're having an issue, a mental health issue, or you're in a bad spot, doesn't mean that we're gonna come in, knock you down, cuff you, and drag you out of your house, right?
Yeah.
It's not the way it works, you know, we're there to help. And we don't get offended by anything you say to us or anything that you do, because we understand that we're dealing with you probably during your worst time, right?
Yeah.
And it's not you on a normal day, right? So we try to go into any type of mental health issue with compassion and understanding, and just provide that help.
I have one last question. I'm not
Sure.
sure if you're gonna be able to answer this, but I work closely with the tech office.
Mhm.
I help a lot, and recently, Securely, a company we've been going through, they red flag things. They give us information. Do you think that's been a big help when it
Yeah,
comes to this kind of
absolutely,
stuff?
absolutely. You know, Securely's picked up a lot of things that we have been able to react on and become preventative as opposed to reactive. You know, so when you initially start something like Securely and you get bombarded with messages you hadn't got before, does it seem like in its initial stage that, man, this is causing us a little bit more work? But over time, you learn how to deal with it, and you learn that it's monitoring there for the protection of everybody.
Yep.
And so Securely is a good thing. There's, you know, and what Securely is for the listeners is everything that's typed in a Google form, in a Word document, in a email, anything that's used in the McCookBison.org system, anything that comes into our system, it's going to scan and check, and it has its trigger words that it's looking for in the writing for student safety, for danger, for criminal activity. It's going to pick all of that up and give the administration notifications of that.
Was Securely? Do you know if Securely was the one that notified?
Securely was involved in the finding of the email, absolutely. So that's how the high school got it as fast as anybody, because we're Mr. Dickus and myself get the Securely messages. So
Thank you for your time.
you're welcome. Thank you, sir.